Back at it here on Kansas Sports Chatter. This is time for story time. We bring in one of the staff writers for KSHSAA Covered, Andy Brown. Andy, appreciate you coming on the show again. Like for you, as we dive into the winter sports, like, do you have like a go-to season or sport that you like to cover, or do you just like all the coverage?
Oh, I like it. I like it all. I mean, there's so many different stories to tell, like in all the different sports. But obviously, growing up, I think, you know, I'm a I'm a KU fan at heart, so basketball was always my number one sport growing up. But obviously, football is awesome, and wrestling, baseball, softball, all of it, track. I love it all. So that's kind of why I enjoy what I do. So, but yeah, basketball, I think it's probably my favorite. So it'll be fun coming up, getting to see all that.
Go time for you. I mean, going back to the weekend after Thanksgiving and seeing those state championships, you were able to cover a couple of them. Start with 4A though. Your coverage and your story on Cape and Mount Carmel, just kind of a cool experience for Cape and to get that state title.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Capen was so dominant in the 70s and 80s, and won made several state games, won several state titles during that span. But they hadn't won one since 1987, I believe. So they broke a long streak there. Finally, was able to break through and win the title as beating Bishop Miege 56-21. But I think maybe the cooler story was seeing their head coach Weston Schartz win his first state championship after 43 years of coaching. And I just can't imagine coaching that long and getting so close on a couple different occasions like he did, and then just finally being able to see that transpire, I'm sure was awesome for him. But I think he's even more excited, or his players, just to be able to do that for him. And so there's a lot of emotion there on Saturday there in Emporia, and it was just really cool to see that team come together and coach being able to hoist that trophy for the first time.
Yeah, you bring up Weston Schartz. I mean, and talking to him afterwards, like, what's his personality like? And can you kind of tell, like, just the impact immediately, like, what that meant for him to be able to win it?
Yeah, he's a sweetheart of a man when you're talking to him. I don't know what he's like as a coach, but he's all about building relationships with players, and that's one of the first things he told me was after they won was, it's all about the relationships, and he loves coaching kids. He loves seeing them grow, and one of the cooler stories he told me, right after the state championship happened, kind of a little backstory. He was a head coach at Wichita West for several years. And in 1997, they were 1 point away from winning a state title then, but lost in a late game to Olathe North. But, after beating Miege, one of the first people to come down to the field and congratulate Coach Schartz was one of his former players from Wichita West, and he had tears down his eyes just,
Wow.
Knowing how happy he was to see his former coach win it. And, Coach teared up a little bit, he said. And, it's those relationships that stick around forever. And that's what makes sports so cool, especially on the high school level, is, the building and the relationship building. And it's just another level. And it was really neat to see his players, just rally around him and do it for him.
I was talking to a coach earlier in the season that had played, Cape and Mount Carmel, and he just said, like, I don't know how anyone's going to touch them. I mean, that was a dominant team. I mean, they got things done in pretty good fashion too.
Yeah, and they didn't even have to complete a pass to do it. They did everything. They did everything on the ground. I think, and Miege coach John Holmes knew that coming in. He knew they were a running attack that's mainly what they like to do. And it was frigid cold in Emporia on Saturday, and luckily I still have all my fingers from not having frostbite. But it's they just, and that's a good Miege defense that they played. And Capen just, especially early in that second half, they just, I think, scored 3 straight touchdowns and just kind of put that game away. And they did it all on the ground. Ken Huff had over 250 yards rushing. Cal Purvis had like 3 touchdowns, who's a great two-way player for them. And Wyatt Solinger, another fullback, who's I think had close to a little over 100 yards and a score too. And I think they had over 500 yards rushing, and that's all they needed. They had 0 yards passing, but it was just a dominant rushing attack. And yeah, I can see why that was my first time seeing Capen this year, so I can see why so many teams find it hard to stop them.
Now, when you're on the sideline covering games, are you a gloves on type of guy? Because sometimes that can affect riding. Like, how do you go about covering games when you're on the sideline?
I don't like wearing them, but that night forced me to wear them because there was no way. Because a lot of times I just use it to. I'm a more of a photographer guy than.
Okay.
I mean, I keep notes on my phone every once in a while, so obviously my fingers were stiff trying to keep notes on my phone, but yeah, it's hard taking pictures with gloves on, but you when you have to, you have to. So, but yeah, it was a cold night, but yeah, it's fun.
Well, I've noticed more and more journalists and just media people in general becoming press box, journalists and media people. Like that's where they usually gravitate to. So no
Now,
shame in that.
listen, we went up to the press box to warm up at halftime, and let's say I took my time getting back down there for the second half, so I might have missed a couple of touchdowns when I went back down there, but yeah, it's what you expect at this time of year, this type of weather. So
You're a smart man playing the long
yeah,
game.
yeah.
Real quickly, Manhattan, you were able to cover that Manhattan State Championship, another dominant performance as well.
Yeah, there was Olathe Northwest was a great story, and getting through that 6A East bracket, and upset special over Olathe West and Gardner Edgerton, and it was that team under Lauren Clark. Lauren Clark really bought into what he was preaching to the guys, and but Manhattan was just kind of, I think it's on a different level, especially that defense was just dominant as they have been all year. And then they got two highlight reel catches from JJ Dunnigan and that University of Miami commit, and he kind of blew that game open, made it 20-0, I believe, right after early in the second half. And then Finn Watson, a first year starter at quarterback who was rotating with guys to start the year, and scored 4 touchdowns. So it was a dominant performance by Manhattan, but they were injury ridden earlier in the year, and took them a while to find their stride. But once they hit the playoffs, they were a team to be reckoned with.
Andy, appreciate it. Good news for you. Like no more frigid fingers, man. You're indoors for the winter season, right? Except for that walk, I guess, to the gym.
Yeah, that can be rough at times, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the indoor stuff for sure.
That is Andy Brown, one of the staff writers for KSHSAA Covered. That'll do it for Storytime.